For more than 30 years, economists have said the exact same thing. This country is about to collapse. The debt, over 260% of GDP. For comparison, Greece had a full-blown financial crisis at 180%. The population, shrinking faster than anywhere else on Earth. Entire cities' worth of people vanish every single year. No war, no disaster, just decline. Interest rates? Near zero for 30 straight years. Something every economics textbook says is impossible to sustain. On paper, this economy should have collapsed a long time ago. Banks should have failed. The currency should have crashed. And yet, none of that happens. While other countries collapse under a fraction of this debt, the system just keeps standing. How is that possible? Why does something that would destroy any other economy simply not work that way here? And is there maybe a reason this country keeps surviving that almost nobody says out loud? In this video, we're breaking down why Japan keeps refusing to collapse. And at the end, I'll show you one detail that puts everything you just heard in a completely different light. The prediction of collapse. It started in 1990. Japan had spent years riding an economic miracle. Real estate prices in Tokyo climbed so high that, on paper, the land under the Imperial Palace was worth more than the entire state of California. Then the bubble burst. Stocks crashed. Real estate collapsed. And Japan slid into a period that became known as the lost decades. Every year since then, analysts have predicted the same thing. This is the year Japan collapses. The national debt will become unsustainable. Interest rates would have to rise. Investors would flee. It never happened. No hyperinflation. No currency crisis. No state bankruptcy. Instead, Japan just kept existing. Quiet, slow but stable. To understand why, we need to unpack three things: the debt, the population, and something almost no other country has: a completely different relationship with time itself. The debt that scares no one. Debt is only dangerous when you owe it to someone else who doesn't trust you. Here's the secret. More than 90% of Japan's national debt is held by the Japanese themselves. Pension funds, banks, insurers, and the Bank of Japan own the overwhelming majority of these bonds. Compare that to countries that borrow heavily from foreign investors. The moment those investors get nervous, they pull their money out, the currency collapses, and the crisis becomes real. Japan mostly borrows from itself. It's almost like owing money to your own family instead of a bank that could call in at any moment. On top of that, the Bank of Japan itself buys up enormous amounts of government bonds. That keeps interest rates artificially low, which means the government's interest payments stay manageable. Even with sky-high debt, it's not a healthy situation. But it's also not a ticking time bomb the way it is for countries that depend on foreign confidence to survive. A country that shrinks. Japan loses hundreds of thousands of residents every year. Entire schools shut down. Villages are literally abandoned and returned to nature. Normally, a shrinking population means fewer workers, less tax revenue, less consumption, a downward spiral. Japan responded differently than expected. Instead of mass immigration, the country invested heavily in automation and robotics. Factories, care homes, even restaurants increasingly run on robots and smart systems that fill the labor gap. On top of that, a surprisingly large share of the older population simply keeps working. Working into your 70s or 80s is normal in Japan, not the exception. The result is an economy that gets smaller but doesn't collapse. It shrinks in a controlled way, like a balloon slowly deflating instead of one that pops. Deflation, the problem nobody wants. Most countries fear inflation. Japan has dealt with the opposite for decades. Deflation, prices that don't rise or even fall. That sounds nice for consumers, but it's economically dangerous. If people expect things to be cheaper tomorrow, they delay purchases. Businesses invest less. Wages don't grow. And yet, this exact problem has given Japan a kind of stability other countries don't have, because prices barely rise. The population doesn't have to worry about a runaway cost of living crisis like we've seen elsewhere. Combine that with a culture of extremely high savings rates. Japanese households save far more on average than Americans or Europeans, and you get a population that absorbs financial shocks far more easily. No growth, but also no panic. The reason nobody says out loud. Here's the point most analyses skip. Japan isn't really an economy built to win. It's an economy built to never spectacularly crash, at the cost of never spectacularly growing either. The government, the central bank, and the population have all made, consciously or not, a kind of silent agreement. Better an eternal mild stagnation than one short, brutal crash. That's exactly why this economy keeps refusing to collapse. Collapse belongs to systems chasing hard growth, and therefore risking hard falls. Japan chose, maybe without ever saying it out loud, the opposite path. And here's the twist. We spent this whole video asking why Japan doesn't collapse. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe we've been looking for the wrong kind of ending because we picture collapse as a single, dramatic moment. A crash, a headline, a bank that fails on a Tuesday, and by Friday the whole system is on fire. That's the version of collapse Hollywood taught us. And it's the version every prediction about Japan was built on. But look at what actually happened over the past 30 years. Japan's average wages today are barely higher than they were in the mid-1990s. An entire generation of young Japanese has grown up earning less, in real terms, than their parents did at the same age. Since the 1990s peak, over 8,000 villages and small towns have effectively been abandoned, not evacuated, just quietly emptied, one funeral and one moving truck at a time. Tokyo real estate at its peak was worth more than the entire United States stock market. Today, decades later, it still hasn't fully recovered. None of that shows up as a single catastrophic event. There's no date you can circle on a calendar. No headline that says, Japan collapses today. And that's exactly the point. What if collapse doesn't always look like an explosion? What if sometimes it looks like silence, a slow leak instead of a blowout? A economy that never crashes because it's already been quietly deflating for a generation. 1 percentage point of growth at a time, one empty village at a time, one stagnant paycheck at a time. If that's true, then the entire premise of this video needs to be flipped. We didn't just spend 8 minutes explaining why Japan avoided collapse. We spent 8 minutes describing what a collapse looks like when it happens in extreme slow motion. So slow that the people living through it don't even recognize it as one. So maybe the real question isn't, why doesn't this economy collapse? Maybe it's, how many other economies around the world right now are on that exact same slow path? And we simply haven't been watching long enough to notice? And that question is for you to answer. What do you think? Is Japan proof that an economy can survive without growth? Or is this just a collapse in slow motion that we're not yet willing to call by its name? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely read all of them. And if this video made you think, like the video, subscribe to Atlas Aura and hit the bell, because next week we're diving into another country that, according to the textbooks, shouldn't even exist anymore.